That's Nick.
That's Joseph. And today we're here to talk about Slingshot, the 13th film directed by Mikael Håfström, which Bleecker Street Media is releasing August 30th, 2024.
13 films. Do you know any of this director's other works?
Yeah, I think you do too. We reviewed his, second to last feature, Outside the Wire, with Anthony Mackie, which I believe was a Netflix release. Emily Beecham, who's in this movie, was also in that. He's Swedish, but he notably kind of had a lot of Hollywood titles about 15 years ago, including the first Escape Plan, The Rite with Anthony Hopkins, which I really didn't like, 1408 with Sammy Jackson and John Cusack, which is a Stephen King adaptation I also didn't like, and Derailed with Jennifer Aniston and Clive Owen, and RZA and Exhibit, if you remember that film.
No. Okay, what is Slingshot about? An astronaut struggles to maintain his grip on reality aboard a possibly fatally compromised mission to Saturn's moon Titan. What is your pull quote?
A derivative sci-fi cheapie with a nonsensical twist, Slingshot squanders an amenable cast. In space, no one can see you simulate.
Oh, mine. Feeling more like a bad pilot episode for a sci-fi TV series, Slingshot's odd characterizations and disruptive organization make the double twist ending not worth the wait.
Yeah, yeah.
There's a lot going on in this story, and I was not super impressed, but
it's strange because it's not terrible. Like, I've seen infinitely worse things, but it's also there's just really nothing of interest happening also either.
No, which is odd. Yeah, it's odd because once we tell the story, it's going to sound like a lot, but I thought it felt very simple. It really did feel like an episode of something like on the USA Network, including the way it looked. And then, like, it doesn't look cheap, but it has a very strange feel to it that I found hard to take seriously. And then the casting and performances made me giggle more than anything. But the story is that Casey Affleck is on a spacecraft as an astronaut. And the mission is we're trying to get to Saturn to do like exploratory work to see how we can get methane, because I guess there's a bunch of methane on Saturn, back to Earth to use as clean energy. And the reason the film is called Slingshot is because obviously Saturn's very far away. So in order to get a spacecraft there, what the engineers have decided to do is the spacecraft, when it passes Jupiter, is going to use Jupiter's gravitational pull to slingshot it to Saturn. And then once the spacecraft gets there, I think they're going to excavate something from like maybe methane to then power the spacecraft back to Jupiter and then slingshot it back to Earth. Okay, so what's going on this ship? It's like a 2-year trip. So the crew, which is comprised of Casey Affleck, his character's name is John. Then we have the captain, played by Laurence Fishburne. And then a co-astronaut, Nash, played by
Tomer Capote.
So
Capone.
Truman Capote as Nash.
Tomer Capone as Nash, very alien type sounding crew member's name, but he's Israeli, and I've seen him in a couple of things, including 7 Days in Entebbe.
I think he's also in The Boys.
That's right. Yes, that's his much more significant resume. Mm-hmm.
So the people, the 3 crew members have to hibernate. So they're given drugs to sleep in 90-day increments to make the trip shorter. So when they wake up, they just check the spacecraft, make sure they're on the right trajectory, and then go back to sleep. Well, we're told there could be a drinking game for the number of times we're told that the drugs used for hibernation have side effects. But those side effects obviously include like hallucinations, confusion, blah, blah, blah. So immediately, Casey Affleck seems affected. Primarily, he's missing his lady love named Zoe,
Played by Emily Beecham.
but then it's also made to seem like they broke up before he left on this trip. And my pull quote saying that the disruptive organization, that's referring to, we keep getting flashbacks. Like anytime, there's very little tension in the story. And it felt like every time we were getting like a morsel of tension, it gets interrupted by a flashback to Casey and Zoe, like building this relationship between two people who I thought the lack of chemistry was humorous. I was giggling a lot at
Well,
how
yes, we're very much told and not shown the chemistry, but it also reminded me of that recent Adam Sandler movie, Spaceman, their domestic drama and separated by space.
we reviewed that film and I liked it much more than this one.
Yes.
But he's dealing with that and he's starting to think he sees her at a point. He's also like early on in this trip, it would appear that the spacecraft hit something, so there's damage to the ship. But they can't really find any evidence of that. But then it seems like the spacecraft is malfunctioning, but the computer system's not reflecting that. So Nash, the character of Nash, he's become paranoid. He's like, we need to abort the mission. Like, we're not going to make it to Saturn with a compromised spacecraft. But of course, the captain, Laurence Fishburne, is saying, like, the importance of this mission goes well beyond our lives. Like, this is for the good of mankind. So no matter what, we're going to try to do it. So, of course, tensions run high. At a point, Nash has to be like incapacitated by Laurence Fishburne. And then we go a step further where Casey, at this point, the audience, we don't trust anything Casey's seeing. But at one point, Casey sees Laurence Fishburne, I guess almost kill Nash, if not kill him. And then Casey goes to sleep in hibernation. And when he wakes up, he's asking where Nash is. Laurence Fishburne won't tell him. And then they have a big fight. So this is where the big twist comes, because Casey Affleck, it would appear, has damn near killed Laurence Fishburne. And then there's like a Siri, Alexa type thing on the spacecraft. And so Casey Affleck is asking, like, who's alive? Where are they? And he's in the bridge of the spacecraft. So he's asking Siri, where's Laurence Fishburne? Oh, he's in the bridge. Okay, where's Nash? Oh, he's in the bridge. Are the crew members alive? Yes. And then he starts asking more questions and he goes, how many crew members are there? And this is where the twist is, because Siri says there's only one. It's a one-man mission. So then he starts freaking out. And then that's when he's able to call for help and he gets Zoe on a walkie-talkie 600 million miles away from Earth. And she's talking to him when he realizes, wait, how am I able to talk to you without a delay? And here's the next big twist. She goes, I'm sorry to be the one to tell you, but you're not in space. You're actually 1,000 feet underground in Mexico. We wanted to do a test run of the mission and make sure the drugs work. So you're actually like in Mexico, safe and sound, except that there was an 8.4 magnitude earthquake. And so that initial, like early in the film, when the spacecraft we thought was hit by something, that was actually an earthquake that caused like the tunnel to get back to the surface in Mexico to collapse. So Zoe's telling him, we're trying to drill down to you, but you got to get out of there in case there's more collapsing. Just leave the spacecraft and go like walk up the ladder. But then Laurence Fishburne wakes up after it looked like he had been killed, and he's telling Casey Affleck, you're hallucinating. You are in space. If you walk out that door, you are going to die. Like, you're just going to go off into space. But Casey Affleck leaves the spaceship, and then we get this weird effect, and then we see that he's underground, and he's climbing up to get to the light, because Zoe keeps saying, just move towards the light, and that means that we can dig you out. But then a symbol that we see throughout the film is a moth to a flame. And then
yes, Janet.
Yeah. That's the way love goes. When he gets to the ladder to climb up, he sees a lamp with a dead moth in it. And that's when he realizes what Zoe told him, which is that moths are attracted to light as an instinct because that's usually the the safest exit out of something. And then we realized that he was hallucinating that and that he really was in space and that he was able to open the spacecraft and we see him fly off into the darkness. So it's like a double twist, reverse, like smack it up, flip it, rub it down. I don't know.
The equivalent of those dream within a dream sequences.
Yes, which I did not find satisfying.
Yeah, I feel like that's been done many an eon ago.
So my first question to you is, was Casey Affleck, so he was not on the spacecraft alone, or was he?
I feel like the fact that shows him blasting off into space would mean that he did have crew members, but that means everything else was hallucination within a hallucination because he's also hallucinating Zoe in moments on the Odyssey
Right,
One. But
right.
that's not so he's having dissociative identity disorder hallucinations. And yeah, I don't know. And also, what kind of a name is John Franks Nash?
From the moment the story started, I felt like something's not right. And I think that is what left me disappointed. Like, oh, so this movie felt crunchy just to have this double reverse twist. Okay. I'm just going to go through my notes. So we're told when we first see them on the spacecraft after they've awakened from their hibernation that it's Christmas time on Earth. Then we see that their psych evaluations are performed by AI, which I think is funny as you, like after finishing the film and looking back, like I think this is an example of how maybe a human needed to evaluate these people because the
Uh-huh.
three of them all seem crazy to me. Okay, adding to the TV series feel of it, I guess like the person running the mission back in Houston is this character named Napier. And I felt like that actor's performance, we see him like three times and we hear him once more, I think. He sounded like he was shooting a commercial. So that really threw me off. Like this seems fake to me.
That's David Morrissey.
Oh, do you recognize him from something?
Not particularly, no, but
So we get all these flashbacks to Casey meeting Zoe, and one of them is their meet cute. And that meet cute was so damn crunchy because it's Casey Affleck sitting in the cafeteria looking as dry and bored as he always does. And then who's the actor playing Zoe?
oh, Emily Beecham. I'm familiar
And
with
you
her.
said I've seen her in something?
Well, she was in Outside the Wire, which we reviewed, but she won Best Actress at Cannes for a film called Little Joe, which is shocking to
She
many.
she's going on my worst hair list. I hated her hair, and I don't think that was a wig. It reminded me of the scene in Dreamgirls where they take their wigs and put them on backwards. It was so ugly. She had this big bump in the back. Oh, I hated it.
I don't
But
know how else do you perform with the hair performance for Lady Scientist?
oh God, her wardrobe, it was all very much like I'm this lady side. Yeah, basically, like so drab and but the first time, like during that meet cute, Casey's playing like I think he's playing a video game on his iPad, and Zoe comes over and says, "Oh, I know this game," and she like helps him beat it or something. But did you notice the way he was looking at her, specifically her hair? I was howling. He looked so disgusted by her. And then to think that he fell madly in love with her, it doesn't make sense. Something else that didn't make sense? Casey's supposed to be 37.
That's what I was just considering. No, I think he said 39.
No, he says, well, he does say 39, but he's saying by the time I reach Titan, which is the moon,
So he's
I'm
supposed
going
to
to
be
be
30.
39. And then Laurence Fishburne says this mission will have taken over 2 years. So when Casey Affleck says I'll be 39 when I get to Titan, this is like 2+ years before that. So that means that he's either 36 or 37 or younger.
I looked it up. This Casey Affleck, this fool's 49.
He's handsome and looks great for his, I mean, he looks great. So it's not that he doesn't look good, but he does not look 37. So I was giggling at that.
No.
Oh God, the minute Nash starts freaking out, I just thought like this seems so unrealistic that because we're told this is like a mission for humanity, that like the greatest mission we will have ever gone on as a people. And so I mean, who's the actor playing Nash, Truman Capote, whatever his name is?
I'm like
He
Capone.
he's
I might
handsome.
say that right. But
Yeah,
yeah,
he's handsome, but that performance was OTT to me.
well, it's in the script by R. Scott Adams and Nathan Parker, who, side note, wrote Moon, which was a film I kept thinking of with Sam Rockwell.
Didn't I
Well,
see that at the Minneapolis Film Festival?
yeah, Duncan Jones showed up. It also reminded me of another Duncan Jones film, Source Code, and Supernova, and Event Horizon because of Laurence Fishburne. But yeah.
But when, like, the minute something goes wrong, like they think something went wrong, Nash goes berserk. And I thought that was bad writing. I mean, it just feels crazy from the get-go.
Well, and also there are several instances where he's whispering or talking, trying to talk clandestinely to Casey Affleck, and Laurence Fishburne straight up can hear everything they're saying, and then yet he persists in still trying to communicate secretively that way. And it's like, hello, dum dum, write shit down somewhere. Like
I know. I felt the
that's
same
what it
way.
is.
There's a point where Casey questions Nash. Like, I don't know if, like your suspicions about the system being off or broken. I don't know that I agree with your calculations. And Nash screams at him, I have a doctorate in astrophysics from Caltech. Sneaky gremlins, are you effing kidding me? And he looks hysterical. It's just so hard to believe that someone on a mission like this would just crack so easily.
But it's the hibernation drugs.
Ugh. Again, how many times are we told that these drugs cause effects? Then Laurence Fishburne, we see him get out of hibernation, and this is right after Nash had concocted a plan because they go to sleep for 90 days at a time. So Nash is trying to abort the mission without Laurence Fishburne knowing. So he tells Casey Affleck, set your timer for 89 days, 12 hours, so we can wake up before him and we can reroute the ship. And so while they're talking, like you said, as if Laurence Fishburne can't hear and even at the end, he says, I've been recording you talking to yourself to prove that Casey's crazy. So Nash is trying to tell Casey, let's turn around. And Casey's saying, no, I have second thoughts. We're not going to do that. Laurence Fishburne just pops up like the boogeyman. And this fool has a flask on him with shot glasses. So that means did he go to hibernation with the alcohol and just woke up with it?
He brought moonshine, his
It's
own concoction.
ridiculous.
All
At one
right.
point, Laurence Fishburne's character calls Nash Puss in Boots. Is that because of his accent?
No, I think that means because he's being weak.
Or he's being a little punk? Okay, well, whatever. I thought that was a weird line. So there's a moment when Casey's character like hallucinates that he's been sucked out of the spacecraft, which is interesting because in the end, that's what happens. But I thought those effects looked real like cable TV.
Yeah. And felt unnecessary. Like I don't even know why we really need that.
No, yeah,
Well, I was going to say that when we he's struggling to remember Zoe's surname in the beginning,
yeah.
which was also making me focus on her name, Zoe. But that's a name that means life, and that is also a name that's used in a lot of kind of AI type narrative. There's a film by Drake Doremus called Zoe, which is all about synthetic humans falling in love. But I don't know, just not even that name felt so. Uh,
Well, speaking of the slingshot maneuver happens. First of all, this movie's too long. It's like an hour 45, and it's at like the 45-minute mark. I don't even. We're not even at the halfway mark when they perform the slingshot maneuver. And
Mhm.
I thought that was so anticlimactic because I mean, to be the name of the film and then to have there be so much emphasis on like, this is not going to work. And then they do it and there's like no tension. The spacecraft is rattling a little bit and then it's like, oh, everything's fine. I
But you
just don't.
the computer tells them slingshot maneuver accomplished. Like,
And don't you
oh.
hate when like the system is so like aware of like I don't know. I just hated the way the computer said that it was accomplished. I almost feel like the story should have, like the climax should have been the slingshot maneuver or something. I don't know. I just was very surprised that it happened so early in the film.
Well, because we have all these wondrous twists that to prolong it.
That's
Now,
right.
now I think Casey Affleck tells him like, "Oh, what you're suggesting is mutiny," and it made me think like, "Oh, if there's a sequel, it could be the slingshot mutiny court-martial."
Well, speaking of other references, there's a point when Casey's on the walkie-talkie because he heard something and he's trying to see if anyone else heard it. So he's saying, like, did anyone hear that on the thing? And Nash goes, not me, Johnny. And then it made me think, are they trying to give us the Shining vibes with this movie? Like this man in a like desolate space, like having hallucinations.
Well, like all the tropes that are just but since none of the characters are really innately interesting, you just don't care. You know,
Well, God, I feel like like everything you're saying, I have a note for it because speaking of that, flashing all the flashbacks to Zoe and Casey together, I got nothing from any of those, nothing. And then when we realized that because there's contention between the two because neither of them want to commit to a relationship because they're both focused on their careers and they both want to be on this mission. And when Casey learns that he got the position, Zoe's upset about it. And I thought that felt so stupid. Everything we had
well,
learned about those two was that they were not going to be mad and that like this was just for funsies until they leave. And then, but then the twist, I don't know if I already mentioned this, but another gag is that we find out that Zoe was a plant. The relationship was not real, that she was, I guess it's NASA. I don't know if they ever used the word or like, do they ever reference NASA? I think they just say Houston and we are supposed to assume that it's NASA. So NASA had one of their employees feign a romantic sexual relationship. I'm assuming it's sexual. We never see it, but the fact that
well,
he's in love with her would indicate that it was, right? Like,
like so she's like in the joy division of NASA.
I thought that was so crazy, but all of the flashbacks to them getting to know each other were so bland. Okay.
Well, in their breakup, it's just like y'all so flimsy. Like you just
Yes.
we're done. They're like, here's my keys. Okay, let's
So,
create adults.
so Nash is starting to lose it because Laurence has already like told him that you're being insubordinate and apparently Nash is also feeling the effects of the hibernation drug and he's losing his memory. But there's a laughably bad scene where Nash is antagonizing Casey and being hysterical and telling him like Zoe does it. Like he's just antagonizing Casey about Zoe and he's screaming. And I just feel like, yeah, that performance, which I'm sure was not the actor's fault. Like I'm assuming that's what they were asked to do. I was giggling the entire time.
Well,
Maybe.
if you've seen previous films from Mr. Halfstrom, I don't know that is so out of bounds for him to direct a performance that way.
Okay, you know what else was crazy? The captain, Laurence Fishburne, guess what he brought onto the spacecraft? A damn
This
handgun, a
has a
pistol.
gun. And Casey Affleck goes, I think it's illegal to have a gun on board. Too late now. What are you gonna do about it?
I was howling when he whipped out that gun because at first I thought, oh, it's probably like a stun gun or like it can't be a gun with like real bullets on a spacecraft. Nope, it's a straight up pistol and he's prepared to use it. He's waving that thing around like he is ready to rip shots. And I just don't understand how that makes any sense.
I like Lawrence Fishburne a lot, and this he doesn't. he doesn't really have anything to do.
He doesn't have anything to do, and I feel like the way he's shot in this film is not very flattering. The angles and the like the distance from the camera, it's not it's not really working for him.
Oh
He
wait,
looks like this billowy thing floating, and then his head looks so big, and I don't know. But
like Dune.
then there's a moment where Casey is hallucinating that his arm is like all these tumors are growing and it bursts. I thought that looked really cheap.
You don't need that. Like, might as well save the money on your special effects for your blasted into space sequence. Like, it
Well,
doesn't
like
matter.
you said, yeah, like you said with the initial hallucination of him flying out of the spacecraft, we didn't need that because we know that that's not real. So what's the point?
Again, to go back to Spaceman, which maybe had a bigger budget, that Adam Sandler space movie where they had the giant CGI spider, which I didn't love all of, but it's like, do something interesting. Like, none of this is interesting.
I also, when we hear the twist that he's on the spacecraft alone because Siri told him, I thought that was so because it's just like, okay, so for this entire story, everything's been weird and nothing really makes sense. So we know something needs to be revealed. And then when it's that, I was shocked. Like, so the most important mission mankind has ever undertaken, and you just send Casey Affleck to go do it? That just seemed unbelievable. And then it's like, well, it's not made super clear that he really wasn't on there on his own. And then the twist of him really being in Mexico doing a simulation, but then the final shot of the film being that he actually is in space. It felt very messy and like,
Well, there's absolutely nothing exemplary about his character, his characterization, his even his name, John. Like, what why did he make the grade? There are plenty of people, the colleagues that were vying for the same position. I don't like what
yeah,
was.
why him? What qualities did he exhibit? But I will say the like I can imagine someone saying, what if we write a story about a guy in space and he's hallucinating and the twist is that really it's a simulation? That alone would get my attention. But then it's like the focus on these hibernation drugs. Like I didn't like it just was so heavy-handed. Like that what he's experiencing is not real. So I'm just waiting and waiting to see what's going to happen with very little tension. And then you have the character of Nash being like something from a soap opera. And then you have Laurence Fishburne, who's kind of distracting. And then you have Casey Affleck being dry and looking incredulous. Like it just, the combination of the three, it was so unserious to me.
Well, what's the subtext? What is this saying about anything?
Well, and then there, yeah, and then that's the bigger issue is like I don't even understand what I'm supposed to feel at the end of this movie because it's definitely not a love story.
No, or like a fractured personality that has significant trauma that they have to work. What? What is
I
it
mean,
about?
it's not about like, like it's not because for a minute I'm like, oh, are they trying to do like eco horror? Because there's a segment where we're learning about how like we're running out of renewable resources and we need to focus on clean energy. But that segment is really more about Casey flirting with Zoe. So I
Yeah.
really don't know what I'm supposed to feel except kind of disappointed is all I felt.
Yeah, same. And the more I talk about it, the lower score I want to give it. But
Sorry
I
to
mean,
these
I don't.
people.
Yeah, I've seen a lot worse, and it wasn't like watching it was completely unenjoyable. But I guess what's flabbergasting is like you have I was going to say Casey Affleck, and Lawrence Fishburne. Those are pretty significant names attached to this.
Well, that's why I said I would watch it because I assumed I would like it, especially after how much I like the instigators. And then the opening of the film, I thought, oh, I really like how it looked initially until I started to feel like, no, this feels like made for TV, TV, like series, sci-fi. Anyway, what would you give Slingshot?
I think I talked myself into a 1.5.
Oh, that's what I was going to give it. And then I thought, no, I'll give it 2 out of 5.
But I
Uh,
mean, it should be marked down for being boring.
I mean, either way, I'm going to give it 2 out of 5 just because that was my what I had resigned myself to. But either way, it's not a good movie. I'm sorry.
Unfortunately, sorry to these men's.
Oh, well, anything else? Join us on Patreon and listen to our podcast. Bye.